Welcome back, everybody, once again to another episode of TJ Talks the News. Today is September 15th, 2021, the day after the California recall. And Governor Newsom has risen victorious in the election. It was quite the blowout, actually. I think the no votes only, or the yes votes only got like 30% of the vote or something like that. And so it really does raise a lot of questions about the current process for initiating a recall, I think. There have been a lot of calls to reform the process or even to get rid of the process altogether. Now, the only reason this recall was successful was because COVID. They had already attempted like 3 or 4 times to recall him, but they were never able to gather enough signatures. But COVID allowed them to extend the deadline for collecting signatures and allowed them to hit the number that they needed to hit. So knowing that, there's like, well, do we really need reform? The only reason they were able to succeed is just because of this weird circumstance. And I would say, yeah, probably. We probably still need some kind of reform. I could see maybe slightly raising the percentage of signatures needed. I think you need like 12% of voters currently. So maybe like bump it up to like 15%. Not too much. I do think that I'm a huge fan of direct democracy. Although Republicans have done a really good job of making an argument as to why that's not a good idea. But I do think that, you know, if you look back like at our founding and stuff, there was this real fear of the masses, and the founding fathers. God, I hate calling them that. The old white dudes who wrote our Constitution, they were somewhat, I think, afraid of the common man because they were part of the aristocracy. They were not all of them, but yeah, for the most part, all of them. Although, I mean, our concept of the elite, I think, might be a little tainted. They were still farmers and stuff. I mean, a lot of them had slaves. Why am I trying to defend them? I don't know. But and I've had this kind of long-standing debate with my dad because he thinks that these kinds of protections against the emotions of the masses, they were afraid that kind of majority rule would easily lead to kind of tyrannical rule, because the masses would be easily persuaded and would allow emotions to take over. And I think we've seen plenty of good examples of that throughout history. Perhaps one of the most significant and impactful in my life being 9/11 and how we responded to the attack. Now again, we weren't using direct democracy. These were our representatives, the ones who were supposed to act as kind of a buffer between the emotions of the people. You know, so I would just point my father at 9/11 and say, look, it didn't do what it's supposed to do. With Trump, it didn't do what it was supposed to do, right? It's supposed to prevent something like Trump happening. All of these safeguards that we put into place, whether it's the Electoral College or the Senate or whatever it might be, right? It's supposed to act as a buffer between the masses, between direct democracy, and the potential for evil. So, yeah, my argument is that one of the reasons direct democracy may fail is because people have never been treated as though their vote really matters. So basically, if we can convince people that voting matters, that their voice matters, and that we all matter equally, then people are far more likely to make smart decisions, I think, at the ballot box. I don't know. I tie it back to teaching and stuff. There's a lot of evidence that shows what it really comes down to is confidence, is this kind of what we call self-efficacy, this belief in yourself. And I feel that when the founders decided to set up this representative form of government, they were basically telling the masses, like we don't really have faith in you. We don't really believe that you're capable of making the correct decisions. And so a lot of Americans kind of grow up in this system where they feel as though, they aren't given that responsibility because people don't trust them. And so why should they take it seriously? Why should they even go out and vote? So I think that we have to, if we want to really reform our democracy, we need to move closer to direct democracy. And that means keeping things like recall elections, because that gives the power to the voters. Now, of course, you got to do it in a way that makes sense and that doesn't allow for, you know, perhaps superfluous recall elections and stuff. I wish we could have recalled Trump, and that's the thing is, if we had that power, we could have, because Trump was never popular. He barely surpassed 40% popularity, so we could have removed him, but again, they don't trust us with that power. I don't know, this might surprise. I actually voted yes on the recall. I've grown just so cynical and just so like what's the point? Either way, we end up on a both sides the same, But I I think what pisses me off so much is that Democrats hold themselves up as the party with the solutions. And you know what? They do. They do have the solutions. They talk about them all the time. The thing is that once they get into power, they don't do anything about actually passing these solutions. And you might say, oh, well, but the Senate, they only got 50 votes. Well, I'm talking about California here. We've had a supermajority for what, more than a decade now? We are the wealthiest state in the country, yet we have the highest poverty rate. Now, there are a lot of good reasons for that, particularly the large influx of immigrants that come into the state. That kind of throws off the stats there. But they could still do something about it. Housing crisis. A lot of people are priced out of housing, and it's only getting worse. Healthcare. I mean, a public option, please, maybe? Childcare. Like, I could go on and on and on. And they don't have any excuses here. They can't point at the Republicans and say, well, no, because they have had all of the power. So, what's stopping them? Why is it that there are still corporations in this state paying negative taxes? Why is education still so expensive? All these things that they claim to champion, like worker rights. Just last Friday, seeing this, so they passed this thing that's supposed to like target Amazon and go after Amazon for workers' rights and stuff. But Friday night, in the darkness of night, they got rid of this provision in the bill that would have required companies to report a COVID outbreak. So if there's a COVID outbreak at an Amazon warehouse, they would have to make that information public. But Democrats removed that provision so that they can keep it quiet and so that corporations can continue to abuse workers. So when I see shit like that, no, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm sorry, and I'm tired of this argument from pragmatism that, but if the Republican, at this point, why does it matter? If the Republicans get into power, they're going to be fucking insane and do some shit, and we're probably going to, it's just going to be total chaos and anarchy. If Democrats get into power, they're going to do these half measures, not even half measures, quarter measures, and it's going to be the same result in the end. It's just going to take us a little longer to get there. So at this point, I'm kind of the mind, like, let's just go with the Republicans so that the country just falls into total chaos, and maybe we can get a new government out of it, because I think that that's the only real solution at this point. And yeah, so I'm maybe a little cynical. I voted yes in the recall, and then I voted for the guy that's in favor of universal health care, Loebs. He's actually a university lecturer, so a fellow educator like myself. And I think I don't know. I think trying to convince people to, like, if somebody were to like come up to me and say like, oh, you shouldn't have voted for him, like, fuck you, man. This is democracy. This is how it works. I can vote for whoever the fuck I want to vote for. And Yeah. People get mad at me though when I tell them this kind of stuff. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm angering some people right now. Anyways, yeah. So they basically ran against Trump. So all the messaging was about how a vote for the recall is a vote for Trump, basically. I was skeptical of this. I guess it's still pretty fresh, and Trump is still in the news enough to where it's going to work. And shortly after the 2020 election, I think it was the head of the DNC came out and said, like, look, we're looking forward to running against Trump in 2024. And when I heard that, I was just like, fucking A, man, I hate these people. But that seems to be their strategy right now, is to basically, prop up Trump as the Republican frontrunner and run against him again. Um, Again, it's probably a smart strategy, especially if Trump ends up running again in 2024. It's a pragmatic strategy because it's more likely to lead to a win, right? But it just feels so wrong because Trump should be in jail, and they have the power to put him in jail, but instead they're choosing to allow him to be free so that they can use him for their own political gain. It's fucking ridiculous. Like his lawyer already went to jail for the crime that he committed, so why hasn't he gone to jail too? But anyways, my thing was like, well, if Newsom wins, okay. If he doesn't, then maybe it'll kind of kick the Democratic Party into gear here and remind them who they work for. So it was kind of a win-win for me, no matter what. Um, and besides, if Elder or anybody else were to get into the governorship, they have less than a year to do anything, and they're up against a legislature who would basically stonewall them and not allow them to do anything, and would probably try to pass some laws to limit the governor's power. So it's just, yeah. And I was seeing news stories like, if Elder wins, it's the end of the United States and crap like that. I don't know. This recall election kind of got to me, I think. Let's see here. EU adopts. By the way, I'm on the New York Times today, which has a giant Tiffany's ad on the top. Um, and I complain about the ads, I think, and I'm not subscribed to any news sites. I probably should be though, because that's one of the reasons why journalism is struggling so much, is because of funding. To fund, they have to get advertisers. To get advertisers, they have to meet a certain narrative, and uh, so I don't know. I should probably subscribe to the New York Times. I do consider it to be one of the better news sources out there, although they have a somewhat sketchy history, particularly when it comes to America's military involvement, um, and military stuff around the world. They are quite hawkish. Uh, let's see here. Yeah, EU adopts a new strategy to counter future pandemics. The bloc announced the creation of a new agency designed to better respond to future pandemics. Alaska is rationing ER care. Here's the latest. How did we go from the EU to Alaska? That's weird. But yeah, I mean, great for the EU. That makes total sense. I think we had a plan in place, and Trump just kind of tossed it out the window. And to be honest, though, I feel like any plan at this point, I don't know. I don't think the EU or anywhere else in the world has had to deal with the vaccine crazies like we have. Um, I mean, I did see that there was fighting in France. I mean, it is happening elsewhere around the world, in Israel, but I think it may be like we're like the center of the movement. And so I don't know, just knowing that, trying to plan for a future pandemic when you know that, 30% of the population is just going to be like, I don't fucking care if I die, like I don't care if I'm killing people. I don't care if I go and murder my father. Like um how do you plan for people's insanity? And I'm sure they do. I'm sure that's exactly what they do. I'm sure there's somebody who even has like a degree in how to plan around people's idiocy. Um, but it just seems like quite the challenge, quite the obstacle to overcome. Alaska is not the only state in the nation, by the way, that's rationing ER care. Quite a few states around the country are doing so, and that's going to lead to more illness and more death. Cheers and tears during Broadway's reopening night. Some of the theater's biggest shows, including Hamilton and Chicago, restarted performances for the first time since the pandemic. Once again, people thinking that the pandemic is over and that we can just go back to doing things as we thought, and then it's not going to hurt anybody, even though it will lead to spread of the virus. So, anyways, I've never actually been to I hate musicals. I'm not a big fan of plays either. Um, Again, I'm not good at sitting and watching things. But my parents went and saw Hamilton not too long ago. The tickets were like $400. I don't know. I mean, I guess you're paying their wages and stuff, right? But I can't see myself ever. I couldn't see myself spending like $10 to go and see something like that. Maybe five. I don't understand it. Hamilton, I would much rather just go and read the Federalist Papers instead of watching Hamilton, um, and the Anti-Federalist Papers. So I don't know. My children love Hamilton though, apps, but they'll just walk around the house because that's what my parents basically have Hamilton on 24/7 over at their house. So my kids just walk around singing all the Hamilton songs. I mean, and it's catchy. It's fine. I think it's a great way to introduce history and stuff to maybe younger people or just kind of mainstream audiences. Um, but I don't understand the appeal. America's grand reopening postponed. Times photographers spent months documenting the coronavirus economy. It doesn't seem like people are postponing it. They're just going full steam ahead. We got some opinion pieces off to the side here. I haven't really commented on the design. Again, this one seems much cleaner. It's much easier to kind of pick things out. I do wish that the little kind of subsections, like they have a live section, they have an opinion section, like the subtitles were a little bigger so you could more easily kind of distinguish things. They have a little COVID tracker too that shows where all the hot spots are. It's predominantly in the south, up kind of through the Center America, Oklahoma and stuff, up into Utah and Idaho and Montana. So basically where all the Republicans live. Oh, I wonder how it's going to impact their vote tallies. Because it's mainly killing off Republicans, and not only older Republicans either, but you know, young, healthy Republicans too. So I imagine it's going to have at least a little dent in their performance, right? Especially because Republicans overall are kind of declining as a demographic. So this is just going to speed it up. On the opinion section, it says abortion has never just been about abortion. Indeed, it has not. So for my class, I'm writing about. So I'm modeling an essay for the students and doing the topic is bodily autonomy because of course everybody wants to write about the vaccine and about abortions and stuff. And I've been because I think you could take that topic in a lot of different directions: capital punishment, abortion, vaccines, even something I think physically disciplining a child, right? Is you could make the argument that is restricting their right to kind of bodily autonomy, right? Drug use, the legalization or illegalization of drugs. There's a lot of different directions I think that you could take that topic in. And I know all my students want me to go with the vaccine. That's what everybody wants me to write about, I'm sure. And I'm just struggling whether or not I want to go in that direction. Part of me thinks no, because it's going to lead to fights. There's probably going to be some crazy person. Although technically everybody in my class should be vaccinated by now. I'm not entirely sure how that's working because my college. So again, I marked that I came down with COVID and it said that I would be contacted about that. Nobody's contacted me yet. It's a fucking joke. So, So like yeah, like I want to do it because I want to avoid conflict, but at the same time I feel like it would be good, right? That's what education should be all about. Is here's this topic. All the students in my class probably think they know the answer to this, like they have their minds already made up. And so that's boom, it's my opportunity to get them to see how complex the conversation actually is and maybe get them to start questioning some of their ideas. So I think I'm going to go with the vaccine stuff. Although abortion would be another direction to go. Um I just feel like the abortion debate ultimately kind of boils down to definitions of life. It's ultimately a philosophical. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I'm just saying, like, if you really kind of dig deep into it, there's a great argument just from again bodily autonomy that women shouldn't But I'm just talking about like when it comes down to what we disagree about, it seems like a lot of it comes down to this definition of life, and that those philosophical arguments, there's no real resolution to them, at least not yet. There might be one of these days. I think it's going to be really interesting when we have the technology to be able to keep even the youngest fetuses alive, even just a fertilized egg alive, and grow it into a baby. And we may even have something that would bring us close to that, right? I think that the youngest uh, fetus that was kept alive outside the womb was like 3 months or something like that, 3 or 4 months. And it certainly complicates the conversation even further, I think, in some really interesting ways. Uh, let's see here. There's lots of stuff. Is being a football fan unethical? Yes, absolutely it is. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. There's actually an essay that I used to teach in class. It was part of an anthology that I used. Um, and I think the title was like, "Is the Super Bowl immoral?" Or "Is watching the Super Bowl immoral?" So it's not just the Super Bowl, but is kind of being a fan and participating in these acts of violence where you have people basically sacrificing their well being and their health to entertain and make money. Um, Especially knowing what the NFL went through in order to cover up the traumatic brain injuries. Um, it raises a lot of good points about why maybe we should not be supporting the institution, at least not in its current form. And you could apply the same thing to a lot of violent sports, boxing, you know. Um, and it is all when you watch it, right? You're ultimately condoning it. You're supporting it, right? So you're condoning the mutilation of another human being. Now, they chose to do that, right? And that's always the interesting discussion that I have in class is, but did they really choose that? A lot of these people who end up pursuing professional sports, um, it may not have entirely been a choice, at least not a totally free choice. Slogans don't save lives. This reminds me of what I was talking about the other day with social media as political activism. So you have like BLM, hashtag BLM, and there's questions about whether or not it is actually effective. I'm guessing that Brett Stevens here, the author of this article, is going to argue that that kind of activism, all these catchphrases, abolish the police, Black Lives Matter, that they don't really do much. That really what you need are boots on the ground. You need to be organized. Um, I don't know. I think it's certainly a useful tool. I don't think we can discount it altogether. Here's one that may relate to me. It says why COVID has broken parents' sense of risk. Um, and I was talking about these things that my colleagues were sending out about COVID and the college's response to it and stuff. One of the most recent messages was a guy complaining about how the college lied to us, how they're not actually keeping us safe, and everything. And this guy responded like, "Dude, chill out. Like every time you walk out of your house, you could get hit by a car. an asteroid could come, and like there's always risk involved in life. It's just part of life. And so maybe parents like me who have kind of become kind of ultra protective, at least in regards to the COVID stuff, maybe our perspective is kind of warped here, and maybe we're overreacting. That, yeah, your kid sending them to school, they might catch COVID, but you know what? There were lots of other diseases they could have caught before. They could have broken a bone. They could have been involved in a school shooting. Like there's risk involved everywhere. And the risk of a child catching and dying to COVID is probably smaller than all those other risks. So, am I overreacting? Or, I mean, there's only so much a school can do to protect a child from a school shooter, right? Um, but I feel like there's a lot more we could do to protect our children from COVID that we just aren't doing. And again, I think it's mainly because of the economy. Um, I mean, we could wait. If we would have just waited a couple months, right? The vaccine would be approved, and perhaps some of those kids who died would still be alive today. So I guess once we get to kind of a sense of normalcy with the virus, where it's like, yeah, we are doing or we have done everything that we possibly can, and now this is just the level of risk that we're gonna have to live with, then yeah, I'll buy into that argument. But at this point, it doesn't seem like we've really done everything that we can to keep them safe. So, and we're intentionally doing things that put them at even greater risk. So I don't know. Is snooping on teens ever okay? No. Asking them about stuff, talking to them, having conversations, yes. But spying on people, no. Go away. College costs are less terrifying than you think. Fuck you, Anna Galvin. Honestly, it wasn't the tuition cost for me. It was just the cost of living. Um, and probably not understanding exactly what I was getting myself into, but just knowing, like, hey, I need this money to be able to afford rent. And part of it was also that I was, sophomore year was the recession, was 2008, and all of a sudden my parents were like, sorry, we can't afford to help you out anymore, so you're gonna have to get a job and do all this stuff. So uh I was just like, okay, I need to be able to pay for these things, and the college is offering me all this money, and it's gonna help me pay for these things. Um, so yeah. Well, I feel like I've probably reached my limit for the day. Ooh, we got some yummy, yummy cooking recipes. Citrusy roast chicken with pears and figs. Mm-mm-mm. Tasty, tasty. Oh, I made these giant chocolate chip cookies, you guys. They are amazing. They're a copycat recipe for Levain's Bakery, I think, or Levain's Bakery. I think it's located in New York. I've never actually tried these cookies, but I remember Googling, like, what's the best chocolate chip cookie in the world? And these ones showed up, and I found the copycat recipe. And the thing is that they're like gigantic. So, like a normal cookie recipe, I'll make, it'll make like 2 dozen cookies. This recipe makes 4 cookies. So it's basically like 6 cookies in one. They are thick, like an inch and a half thick. And they're just, oh my gosh, they're crispy on the outside and then they're gooey on the inside. Trust me, look up Levain's Bakery copycat chocolate chip recipe, chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's really good. Just the trick is to make sure your butter is really really cold. Or actually, what I did was just chill my dough after the fact. But either way, I think will work. I should do a cooking channel too, huh? I should just have all the YouTube channels, just all the things. True Renaissance man. Alright, you guys, that's going to be it for me for today. Thanks for watching on this lovely, lovely September morning. I will see you all tomorrow.